This podcast is brought to you today by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial by simply going to audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, that's audibletrial.com/TSE. Tell them your boy Donald sent you. Get your new sales book, man. You need something good. You know what? Complacency is just such a bad thing when it comes to selling. Last week, I gave an example about track meet and about running in track and how you got to push yourself. I'm going to give you some more thoughts and insights today. The conversation is going to continue about how we can make sure that we're not complacent and what we can do to not be that guy in our sales team. You're going to love this episode. Promise. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I am so excited to be here with you today, another great Monday morning, and I'm thankful that you're here, you listen to this podcast. And you know what? I also want to tell you, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the fact that you are telling others about the podcast. I have to give a shout out to a guy. Last week, he reached out to me and his name is Sean Ford. Sean actually connected with me and told me that he found a podcast because his brother actually asked his brother, what is some good sales podcasts? And his brother told him to check out this list by Lead Pages. So I want to give a big shout out to my buddy, Tim Page over at Lead Pages. And they wrote an article, put us in the article, and Sean found a podcast, and now he's listening to it, loving it. So thank you so much, Sean. I wish you great success as you're out there hustling. Also want to give a big shout out this week to Melissa Anu. Thank you so much, Melissa, and Kamal. Also to Daniel Torres. Keep hustling, Daniel, and I'm excited to connect with you. I'll make sure to reach out, and we can set up a time to chat. If you'd like to connect with me, like these fine folks, feel free to go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly. You can connect with me on Twitter as well, Donald C. Kelly. You can also connect with me on Instagram, Donald C. Kelly, or you can go ahead and like our Facebook page and join our Facebook community. It's called the Sales Evangelizers. We have a group on Facebook and LinkedIn. Both are called the Sales Evangelizers, and it's a community where sellers like yourself, me, other entrepreneurs can come together. We can share thoughts and insights, ask questions, build strategic alliance, and who knows, find some opportunities there as well to be able to connect with others who can lead you to maybe your next client, and you can probably help them as well. So awesome community. Would love to have you join. It's been growing, and I want to tell you, thank you so much for sharing it. Really, really appreciate it. Next week also is going to be the July 4th week. So July 4th week, we're going to still have an episode as always, but we're going to be a podcast movement. We're going to be out in Chicago. So if anyone's out in Chicago, make sure to connect with us. We'll be there, my wife and I, and a lot of folks out there in the podcasting community. I have the opportunity to MC. So check that out as well. Check out podcastmovement.com if you want to get a chance to learn more about the event. But hey, we're going to have a great episode today. So let me just start talking about this. The idea here is complacency. Everyone knows what that is, right? The literal definition of the word is a feeling of smug or uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one's achievement. So it's like you, in a sense where I'm going to use it today, talking about complacency, it's where you are comfortable with where you are. And in sales, it's not necessarily a good thing. We have to, in this life, and it's not necessarily a good thing. You have to learn to get past your comfort zone. We talk about this. The most nicest place that any of us want to go to is just our sweet spot, our little comfortable spot. But the problem is life is not here for us to just sit here and to be comfortable. It requires us to be able to challenge ourselves. Even since our infancy, even since we were a kid, our body has been pushing us to do more. If we were complacent, we're just crawling. A lot of us will be just crawling around today. But our body and life and the way things is, we're propelled to do more, to walk. And then we start to run and we start to do a little bit more things, more complexity, and introduce more complexity into our lives. We need to continually grow. It's like this continual process of improving ourselves, right? Some sales folks, and it breaks my heart. And I'll give you an example. One of my family members, dude, is so smart. But because he doesn't push himself, he's complacent with where he's at. And I always just feel like so bad because I'm like, bro, you are so much smarter than me and a lot of other people. Why don't you push yourself? Why don't you do better? But he's complacent sometimes where he's at. And it saddens me to see that because it's like talent going to waste. And as a seller and as a sales leader and as I work with sales leaders and sales teams, sometimes it just breaks my heart. I'm like, dude, this guy could be performing so much better, or she could be doing such a great job in improving herself, but she's complacent or he's complacent. And complacency, again, is not the best thing for sales because what starts happening is that your momentum is gone when that happens and you start to degress. You start making less money than you typically would. And it just becomes a spiral. And I've seen so many great sellers fall down into this pit of despair and just feels like you can't get out of it. And it saddens me to see that. But today I'm going to tell you 5 things that typically, causes complacency, and then how we can get past those things. Is that fair enough, right? The first one is that you're doing too good. I mean, it sounds bad to say that, right? But let's look at it like this. Sometimes the sales leaders might say, well, for instance, Mary over there, she's killing it. She's doing an awesome job. She's hitting her quota. I don't need to worry about her. And that's one big problem, because what starts happening is that Mary has no one to be accountable to, because you're spending so much time worrying about the underperforming sellers that you don't spend time worrying about the top performing sellers, that they become complacent with where they're at. They have no challenge. They have no coaching, because you're spending so much time worrying about these guys who are new, or the folks who are not selling at all, or just not hitting quota. You spend all your time there. You sacrifice Mary's time to sit down with her and to see what you can do to push her to the next level. Next thing you know, Mary starts to become an underperforming seller, where she just starts to digress, so to speak, and not hit where she should be. She'll still hit quota. But imagine that if she had a push or a drive. Maybe quota is $500,000. What if you were able to push Mary to get to $600,000? Is that possible? Of course, because she's doing some of the things that's making her hit 5, but she needs that proper coaching. So it's imperative that as a sales leader that you do that. You owe it to yourself, to Mary, and to the company to make sure that Mary is more than a good seller, but that she becomes an exceptional seller and not just stay complacent in that level. And Mary, it's also your obligation too. One of the things that you can do to make sure this happens is to find a partner, find somebody else that you can challenge you. And that's where joining a community like the Sales Evangelizers, finding someone else who's in a complementary industry that could be, so you can push each other. You can, just have this guide, or, you find other mentors that can make sure they, can help you. But to sit back and to stay complacent is not good. You're not going to do anyone any good by doing that. The other thing sometimes is that when performing sellers like Mary hits their target without really thinking too much, then they start to say, well, you know what? I don't really need to do anything. I don't need to listen to anything else. I don't need to read any more books. I don't need to improve. And because they do that, then they rely on their own skills, and that eventually causes them to mess up. We talked recently about the idea of having a checklist and making sure you stick to that checklist. The best performing sellers, the best performing, doctors, the best performing individuals in careers or wherever in life, they still follow the fundamentals, and they master the fundamentals, and they improve on the fundamentals, and they just continually improve. Folks like you listening to this podcast, you're finding other ways to gain education to improve yourself. So that's great. So even if you're hitting your numbers, you got to make sure that you just push yourself. Third reason is, so they're hitting their numbers so far, they are doing well, so manager doesn't pay attention to them. The third reason or third thing that can come up is that they don't have any goals. For sellers like Mary who are doing really well, I'm sorry to keep picking on you, Mary. If you're Mary, you're listening to the show, I'm just picked a random name, Mary, so please don't be offended. But let's change it now. Let's say David, which is another example I always use. So let's say David has no reason. He has no goals. And I've seen this, and it hurts, man. When someone doesn't have a goal, they don't have a purpose, don't have a why, they just come to work to just come to work. They can do it without really thinking. So this ties with the other one before. If you don't have a personal goal, a personal desire, you're not going to increase. I've had goals because I wanted to make a better life for myself and for my family. So that pushes me. I get up early. I'll do whatever I need to do to make it happen. I'm going to grind. I'm going to outperform people who are smarter than myself. They're not going to beat me based on my performance. I'm going to outperform them. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it happen, because I have that purpose and that why to make my life better and my family life better. And I've shared an example where I've, my family situation before, and how it pushes me to make sure that I don't ever end up in a situation like that. So you got to have a purpose. Without a purpose or a why, without a cause, you're not going to be effective. And I remember when I started hitting some of my goals and I stopped, accomplished some of the dreams and ideas that I had, it kind of like, what next? But you always got to have something that pushes you. You always have something that's going to drive you and help you. You know what I mean? Another reason that many sellers become complacent, especially if they're doing okay or doing decent in a company, is they have no challenge. Gamification is important. And that concept of gamification is just putting like a contest or some kind of challenge within the organization. And you may be, if you're a top performing seller and you are, double ahead of what some of the other people are right now, you may become complacent because you're like, no one's going to hit you. No one's going to hit your level. And you see this with athletes sometimes. Some of the best athletes in the world, they're performing so well. They're like, I'm the top of the world and no one can beat me. So they become complacent. They can continue to improve. But you got to make sure you challenge yourself. So what do I recommend for this one? I recommend, just like with the other one, find a partner. Find somebody else, again, in another industry, another company. Find other top performing individuals. Reach out to me. I'm sure I can connect you with a couple top performing individuals that can challenge you that mastermind is important. That's kind of like why we have TSE Hustlers League. That's the paid community that I have, because we have folks who come into that group, they get challenged, they have the accountability of others, and they get an opportunity to be able to just be pushed. So they have more than just, being in a company. You can have others that you are accountable to. So that's important. And the last thing that happens is that sometimes people have the mentality of, I know what I'm doing. And ties back to one of the ideas already. If you're doing well, this could be the danger. If you start doing so well and you think you're God and that you don't necessarily need to have any improvement, you're doing well, you are just going to eventually run into circles and run out of steam. I tell you, the same things you've learned, things you may have learned. I'll give you an example with this. There's a gentleman, and he is a trainer, and one of my friends bought into a franchise, and this guy is training them. This guy was phenomenal in the 1980s, in like 89. So homeboy thinks the same strategies and tactics he's learned then is great. He doesn't need to take advantage of social selling. Granted, some of the stuff that he employs, that he uses are great. Some of those strategies are good, I would say. But they're not necessarily great. Let's put it like that. They're good, but they're not great. There's so many better ways. He's working hard, but could you be more effective? You know what I mean? Why work so hard at something when you can do it more effectively or efficiently in a better way? And that's one of the problems in scenarios like this. People who feel that they don't need to improve, they get complacent. The mentality of doing fine. I don't need help from management. I don't need that training program that you guys are paying for. I don't need to read any of the books. I've been doing well for so long. Those are the ones in jeopardy of becoming complacent. But I hope this makes sense. People who are doing well typically are ones who fall complacency. Some managers say, I'm not going to pay attention to them. Or maybe they're hitting quotas, they're hitting the numbers. They're like, okay, well, if they're hitting quota, then, sellers might be like, okay, I got to the spot where I need to get to. The third part is that they may not have goals. That's one reason why they become complacent. They don't have something that's pushing them, external force. They don't have challenge amongst their teammate that can help them become complacent. No one, they may be selling better than some of the members of their team, or they just at a mediocre level, and they're like, I don't want to hit that big guy. I don't want to reach the big guy's level, or I'm doing better than the guy below me, so I'm okay right here. And that's dangerous too, man. Don't want to be stuck in that area. Or I know what I'm doing mentality and don't want to accept any other training or any other improvements. And those people are most dangerous. So my encouragement would be a lot of this is to get accountability, get a goal, and get some accountability. If you're a leader of an organization, make sure you have coaching with your teammate. You got to make sure you sit down with them. You got to talk to them. You got to see what drives them, what pushes them. But I hope this is able to help you. I hope this makes sense. All in all, I do these episodes because I want you to be successful. I really do. I want you to be happy. I've been in your shoe. I know some of the challenges. I know some of the difficulties, whether you're a sales leader or you're a sales rep, or you're new or you're a veteran. I've been where you are, and I want to make sure to give you the resources that can definitely help you to improve. Again, I always mention Audible because I love them, and obviously they sponsor our podcast, but they really do. I love my Audible books. The one that I would recommend that ties very closely with the content we talked about is Kevin Cruz's book, 15 Secrets Successful People Know About Time Management. That will help you to make sure that you don't remain complacent. It's helping you to utilize the resources and the time you have to be more effective. And the other one that I recommend that is really good as well is Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champion. And I love that book, and it's a phenomenal one. Get it at Audible. Just get a free audiobook download or a 30-day free trial by going to audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, it's audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy. But most importantly, I want you to go out and do big things.